You're listening to the Joe and Rosa Show, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to the Joe and Rosa Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Rosa.
And with us today we have Emily G. Stroud. She's an MBA and author of the book Faithful Finance. How are you doing today, Emily?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you. You say in your book that we should let a professional worry about our finances so that we don't have to. Can you tell us, our listening audience, a little bit more about that, please?
Okay, well, as a certified financial analyst, an MBA, this is what we do for a living. So just like you would go to an MD for medical advice, you wouldn't try and manage your own health issues if you weren't in the medical field. We recommend that you let people that are professionals manage your money. Also, in this day and age, we are all very busy people, especially people with kids and jobs and working parents. This is something that you can outsource and delegate to someone who can handle it professionally. And I always tell my clients that the cost of a financial advisor should be way less than the benefits of not making poor decisions over the long term and really having goals and a path in order to achieve those goals. And if you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going. So it's just always best to sit down with a unbiased third party, first of all, and then a professional that can really help you achieve your goals.
Well, that sounds like it would be good advice for people who have some finance. What kind of advice would you have for people that are just starting out or maybe don't have so much?
Well, that's a common misconception that I need to have money in order to have a plan. And the reality is the best time to start a personal financial plan is when you're just starting out, because then you can start learning to save just a small portion of your income. If you don't learn to save when your income is at the lowest, I promise you it will get harder and harder to learn to save, because what people do is, as their income increases, what do you think they do? They just increase their spending. So what we're trying to do is get people disciplined and have a plan so that they make wise decisions over the long haul. Also, a good example would be retirement. A 22-year-old that just graduated from college and has the opportunity to put money in a 401k, if they're doing $50 a month in a 401k, it's amazing how much money they will have when they get to retirement, and that's not even painful. They won't even miss that.
It sounds like you're also the principle about if you're faithful in what is least, that'll apply to when you do have something that's more. And in chapter 2 of your book, you talk about cash being king or queen. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, I use this as a sticky phrase because I want people to remember this. Everybody needs an emergency cash reserve fund, and that's why I say cash is king or queen, because that's really when the rubber meets the road. You have a broken refrigerator, a flat tire, an unexpected medical bill. If you don't have any cash and savings, then that's when people end up using credit cards or borrowing money from a bank, and it's really hard to get out of that debt cycle once it starts. So if you have at least 3 months, even preferable would be 6 months of living expenses in cash that you can get to very easily, then this just protects you from all of those unforeseen expenses. This is especially important if you work in an industry where there's always a chance of a layoff, or if you're self-employed and your income fluctuates from month to month and you're not ever quite sure how your income is going to be for the month, then I really recommend 6 months of living expenses in cash.
So that would tie into the concept about paying yourself first as well, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. You need to think of yourself as a non-negotiable expense. You're the most important person on your payroll.
Yes, and so in chapter 4, you get into the concept of God being the good gift giver, and I think that is so important. Can you go into more detail about that?
Of course. This is one of my battle cries of faithful finance is some financial advisors will tell their clients that they cannot afford to tithe, and I absolutely disagree. I would say you cannot afford not to tithe. It's part of being obedient with our resources. Everything ultimately belongs to God, and He will only entrust you with more if you have been faithful with less.
And so, talking about debt, as we were a few questions ago, you talk about not robbing Peter to pay Paul, and also along with it that nobody ever got rich paying too much for a house. Can you tell us about those different concepts?
Okay, well, they're unrelated and related. Debt is not all bad. However, the debt that is bad is the one that most people think about, and that's credit card debt. I think that credit cards can be used effectively for rewards such as airline miles, and you can actually get a lot of travel benefits. However, you have to pay them off at the end of the month. If you're not disciplined to pay off your credit cards at the end of the month, then it's not worth any type of reward because you're going to pay so much in interest that you'll get on a slippery slope of being in debt that you can't get out of. Now, the debt that I consider not bad debt is related to a house, and that is a mortgage. If you never buy a house, even with a mortgage, then you will never, ever own a house. So when you get close to retirement, you want to own your own home and live without a mortgage. But if you continue to rent for your entire life, then you will always be, quote unquote, a slave to the landlord. So I talk about in the chapter, Nobody Got Rich Paying Too Much for a House, about how to wisely purchase a home. There is a discipline. You need to have a budget before you ever go and look at a home, especially as women. We fall in love quickly. We're arranging the furniture in the room. We're picking out our children's bedrooms. And if we go into the house hunt without knowing exactly what we can afford to spend, then once again, we'll start convincing ourselves, well, if I just stretch a little bit, then I can afford this. And that is also a slippery slope. So I do encourage families to buy a home, even if with a mortgage, but they really need to have a budget in place before they ever start looking for a new home.
Oh, yeah. That is very good advice because your emotions can run away with you. And then you find yourself in debt. And that's not a place that you want to find yourself over the long haul. And so going on in your book, you talk about the fact that a penny saved may actually be more than a penny earned. Can you tell us some more about that?
Well, that is a play on words. But what I'm referring to here is investing wisely. And so just because you save 1 penny doesn't mean it's always going to be 1 penny. What we want to do is invest wisely and turn 1 penny into 5 pennies over time. However, I'm not encouraging get-rich-quick schemes or anything like that. Just systematic saving and investing, such as well-diversified mutual funds, over time will help you grow your money. And one thing I want to add, the best way to save money and invest wisely is called dollar cost averaging. This is what happens in a 401k plan, whether people realize it or not. You're saving the same dollar amount every single month in a disciplined manner. So when the market is high, you're buying less shares, and when the market is low, you're buying more shares. So this takes the volatility out of your portfolio over the long haul. So the very best way to create wealth is to save your pennies every month, invest them wisely, and in a systematic, disciplined approach.
Yeah, and you talk about not putting all of your eggs in one basket. What do you mean by that?
That just refers to diversification. That's a buzzword that sounds pretty complex, but really all it means is spread your money or your assets out over different types of categories or investments. You don't want all of your money in one stock. You want to have stocks and bonds and cash, maybe some real estate, international holdings. And this is, once again, where a professional financial advisor comes in handy because this is their wheelhouse. So let them help you. This isn't something that you should try to do by just looking on the internet.
Yeah, I can tell that just by listening to you talk about it. And so moving on, you talk about things in your book about having the proper insurances. What are some of those and how important is that?
Okay, well, especially for young couples with children who are still in what I call the accumulation phase of life. They're accumulating assets, they're saving for maybe college education for their kids, for future retirement, for buying a home or maybe the next home. They are not prepared to support their children, most likely if they were to die without life insurance. So if you have children at home, you really need to have life insurance, especially for your spouse. They will then have time to grieve. And when you're grieving the loss of a parent or a spouse, that's difficult enough. The last thing you want is to also be suddenly in financial straits. That's just two bad things that we can avoid. Now, I want to say this. Insurance is not an investment. Insurance is protection from the worst case scenario. So in a perfect world, you'll have insurance and you'll never have to use it. So I encourage my clients, my readers, to get enough insurance, but for the least amount of money. There's a lot of different types of insurance. I cover some of these in the books. Long-term care insurance, for example, that is for the high cost of medical care, such as a nursing home, assisted living, or home health care needs that aging adults have in their senior years. People don't realize this, but the average monthly cost of a nursing home today is around $5,000 to $6,000 a month. So if a couple is retired and one of them ends up needing this type of care, that is the number one reason that many people lose all of their savings. So one way to mitigate that is with long-term care insurance. And then if you have a need, the insurance kicks in and covers all of those costs. So once again, I hope that my clients never need long-term care, medical care. But if they do, then we want to be properly prepared. Also, another type of insurance that's more appropriate for people in their working years is disability insurance. Because from a financial standpoint, this may sound morbid, but you're better off dying than you are becoming disabled. And that does not mean we don't want you still around, but if you no longer can work and you have astronomical medical bills, the burden that puts on a family is really tough. And so disability insurance, once again, protects you from the worst case scenario.
Wow. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about. And unfortunately, we are out of time, and there's so much more that we could discuss. And can you just tell our listeners where they can find you, Emily G. Stroud, online, as well as your book, Faithful Finance?
I would love to. I have a website, Emily G. Stroud, that's EmilyGStroud.com, EmilyGStroud.com. You can purchase a copy of Faithful Finance on my website. It's also available on Amazon in an e-reader format or hardback copy. So either place is a great place to buy the book. I also have an author page on Facebook where we are putting new content out every single day. It's our mission to get this information into the hands of as many people as possible. And that page is Emily G. Stroud, MBA, CFA, just exactly how my name appears on the book.
Okay, well, I thank you so much for joining us on the Joe and Rosa Show today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.